You never know the influence people have in your life, the greatness that you have. And so when you begin to look at that, as teachers, sometimes we are mothers and fathers. We are those people of influences, just the way Miss Ritchie was an influence for me. And a greater sense of purpose of what we do here is looking at how we bring value. And for me, a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to go back and I wanted to find Miss Ritchie. I wanted to try to see if I could find her. And so I started to search. I searched everywhere trying to find this woman who had inspired me to be great, and I couldn't find her. But then eventually I tracked her down. She was living in a place called Fairborn, Ohio by Wright State University. And I remember I got on the phone and I started calling. And I'm calling all the Ritchies, and then all of a sudden there was a Betty Jean Ritchie. And I called it. Guy picks up the phone, it's her husband. Says, hello. I said, yes, my name is Anthony Garrett. I said, I'm an old student of Betty Jean Ritchie. Is she there? I wasn't sure if she had passed. And he said, yeah, she's here. I said, well, my name is Mark, and I'm an old student. I want to surprise her, so could you put her on the phone, but don't tell her it's me. So Miss Ritchie, she gets up, and she comes to the phone. And I remember that he says, hey Betty, there's somebody on the phone. She's like, well, who is it? No, some guy selling carpet. Get on the phone, you know. So she gets on the phone, and she says, hello. And my heart's beating a mile a minute. Scared to death about what I'm going to say to the woman who inspired me to be great. How do you do that? Well, the thing about it is that we talked for a minute, and I said, Miss Ritchie, I said, it's Mark Anthony. I said, it's Mark Anthony Garrett, 1977, Kitty Hawk Elementary School, you know. But before I said my name, before I said that, she says, who is this? I said, well, Miss Ritchie, she says, oh, Mark Anthony Garrett. She says, how you doing, son? My heart was beating a mile a minute, and it was a real surreal moment. And I said, Miss Ritchie, I said, yeah, it's me. It's Mark Anthony. I says, but how'd you know? It's been so long. And Miss Ritchie, she says, Mark, I have caller ID. So, you know, after the embarrassment of, yeah, it's been some years back, right? You know, so it's like 99, you know. So after the embarrassment of this, you know, I'm like, okay, Miss Ritchie, caller ID. And so I started spazzing off. Miss Ritchie, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And all of a sudden, she says, Mark, why don't you come see me? So we set it up. What you saw in the video was a rehearsed version when we did a documentary, but I went to her house and I remember knocking on the door and she answered the door. And I walked up. And I walked up and she opened up and I didn't know what to say. I said, Miss Ritchie, I said, how you doing? I remember I hugged her and I picked her up and she's like, put me down. So, you know, so I put her down and we walked inside and we sat down and we talked about everything, about life, about purpose, about the transformation, about all the things that you guys do every day. And, you know, I told her how significant she was to me, and she starts crying and I start crying. She had a little toy poodle, it's crying. So everything is crying and we're just in a spiritual moment. Now, remember, I got up and I asked her, I said, Miss Ritchie, I said, I want to do something bigger with my life. I want to make a difference.